Laughter echoed through the car, a symphony of joy that seemed to make the vehicle itself hum with life. The open road stretched before them, a promise of adventure and the unknown. It was a ribbon of asphalt that seemed to lead to endless possibilities, each mile a new chapter in their story. Four friends bonded by years of shared laughter and secrets embarked on their annual pilgrimage. This journey was more than a tradition. It was a testament to their enduring friendship, a ritual that reaffirmed their bond. This year, their destination was Camp Crystal Lake, a haven nestled deep within the embrace of towering pines. The camp was a place of legend, whispered about in hushed tones, a place where the past seemed to linger in the shadows. The 4th of July beckoned, a symphony of sizzling barbecues, crackling bonfires, and the dazzling spectacle of fireworks painting the night sky. It was a time of celebration, of freedom, and of the promise of new beginnings. Excitement crackled in the air, as palpable as the summer heat shimmering off the asphalt. The anticipation was a living thing, a current that ran through them, electrifying their every moment. This year, they vowed, would be the best yet. They made a pact, a solemn promise to make this trip unforgettable, to seize every moment and live it to the fullest. They had their usual supplies, tents, sleeping bags, enough food to feed a small army, and enough fireworks to rival a small nation's celebration. Each item packed with care, a token of their readiness for the adventure ahead. More importantly, they had each other. Their friendship was their greatest asset, a bond that had been tested and strengthened over the years. They were young, they were free, and they were ready to celebrate. The world was theirs for the taking, and they intended to make the most of every second. The car stereo blasted their favourite songs, each lyric a shared memory, each beat a shared pulse. Music was the soundtrack of their lives, a thread that wove their stories together. The world outside melted away, leaving only their camaraderie and the open road. In that car, they were invincible, a force of nature bound by friendship and the promise of adventure. Unbeknownst to them, the promise of freedom held a sinister undertone, a creeping dread that would soon taint their laughter with the bitter taste of fear. The road ahead was not just a path to adventure, but a journey into the unknown, where shadows lurked and secrets waited to be uncovered. Camp Crystal Lake welcomed them with open arms, its serene beauty a stark contrast to the bustling city life they had left behind. The tranquility of the place was almost palpable, a soothing balm to their weary souls. Towering pines stood sentinel, their needles forming a verdant canopy overhead. These ancient trees, with their gnarled branches and thick trunks, seemed to whisper secrets of the forest to those who would listen. Sunlight dappled the forest floor, painting shifting patterns of light and shadow. The interplay of light created an almost magical atmosphere where every step revealed a new enchanting scene. The air, crisp and clean, hummed with the symphony of nature, the chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of a lonely bird. It was a melody that spoke of life, of the interconnectedness of all things in this secluded haven. They found the perfect spot to set up camp, a secluded clearing bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. The golden light cast long shadows, creating a picturesque scene that seemed almost too perfect to be real. Jake, S1, this spot looks perfect. Let's get everything set up. His voice carried a note of excitement, a sense of adventure that was infectious. Emily, S2. Yeah, it's beautiful here, almost too perfect, don't you think? Her words, though light-hearted, carried an undercurrent of unease that was hard to ignore. Sarah, S4. Come on, guys, let's get to work. We have a lot to do before it gets dark. Her practical nature always kept the group grounded, ensuring they stayed focused on the tasks at hand. Tom, S5. I'll handle the firewood. You guys focus on the tents. He moved with purpose, his steps confident as he ventured into the woods, the crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound accompanying him. As they worked, a strange unease began to settle over them. It was subtle at first, a fleeting feeling that something was not quite right. The laughter wasn't as carefree, the smiles not as bright. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, now seemed to hold a darker, more sinister presence. They couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes peering at them from the depths of the woods. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig seemed to amplify their growing paranoia. Jokes fell flat, replaced by an uneasy silence punctuated only by the sounds of their hurried preparations. The camaraderie that had marked the beginning of their trip was slowly being eroded by an unspoken fear. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and deep violet. The beauty of the sunset was lost on them, overshadowed by the encroaching darkness that seemed to bring with it a sense of impending doom. With the darkness came a deepening sense of unease, a primal fear that whispered of unseen dangers lurking just beyond the reach of their firelight. The once comforting crackle of the campfire now seemed to mock their vulnerability, casting flickering shadows that danced menacingly around them. They huddled closer together, seeking solace in each other's presence, but the feeling of dread was inescapable, a silent spectre that loomed over their every move. The bonfire crackled merrily, casting flickering shadows that danced and writhed at the edge of their campsite. The flames leaped and twisted, creating eerie shapes that seemed almost alive, as if the fire itself was trying to tell a story of its own. They huddled closer, seeking comfort in each other's presence. The warmth of the fire was a stark contrast to the chill that seemed to seep from the surrounding darkness, wrapping around them like an invisible shroud. The earlier unease hadn't dissipated, instead solidifying into a palpable tension that hung heavy in the air. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen, something that would shatter the fragile peace of the night. Stories of strange lights in the woods and whispers of a local legend, a man driven mad by grief who roamed the woods with a shotgun, resurfaced from the depths of their memories. These tales, once dismissed as mere folklore, now seemed to carry a weight of truth that was hard to ignore. Jake, S1. Remember those stories about the guy with the shotgun? They always gave me the creeps. His voice was barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might summon the very horrors they spoke of. Emily, S2. Oh, come on, Jake, it's just a story, probably made up to scare kids. She tried to sound confident, but there was a tremor in her voice that betrayed her true feelings. Sarah, S4. Still, it feels different being here, doesn't it? Like the stories might be true. Her eyes darted nervously around the campsite, as if expecting to see the ghostly figure of the madman emerging from the shadows. Tom, S5. Let's just enjoy the night, guys. No need to get spooked by old legends. He forced a laugh, trying to lighten the mood, but it sounded hollow and unconvincing. They tried to laugh it off, to dismiss it as superstition, but the darkness seemed to amplify their fears, lending credence to the whispers of the wind through the trees. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig seemed to carry a sinister undertone, as if the forest was alive with unseen eyes watching their every move. A twig snapped in the distance, the sound sharp and clear in the stillness of the night. It was a small noise, but in the oppressive silence it was enough to send a jolt of fear through their hearts. They froze, their eyes darting to the darkness beyond the circle of firelight. The shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching towards them like dark, grasping fingers. Silence descended once more, heavy and oppressive, broken only by the frantic beating of their hearts. The night seemed to close in around them, the darkness pressing down like a physical weight. They were no longer celebrating freedom, but rather they were prisoners of their own fear. The stories they had laughed at earlier now seemed all too real, and the forest, once a place of adventure and excitement, had become a realm of shadows and whispers, where every sound and every movement held the promise of something terrifying, lurking just out of sight. They tried to reassure each other, to find comfort in their shared presence, but the fear was a living thing, growing stronger with each passing moment. The fire, once a beacon of warmth and safety, now seemed like a fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. Then faintly at first they heard it, the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the direction of the woods. It was a sound that sent chills down their spines, a sound that spoke of something or someone approaching. They looked at each other, eyes wide with fear, and for a moment no one dared to speak. The footsteps grew louder, closer, and the air seemed to thicken with dread. They knew they had to do something, but what? Run? Hide? Confront whatever was out there? The options raced through their minds, but fear held them in place, paralyzing them with its icy grip. As the footsteps drew nearer, they braced themselves for the unknown, their hearts pounding in unison. The night was no longer just a backdrop to their stories. It had become a living, breathing entity, filled with the echoes of their deepest fears. And in that moment, as they faced the darkness together, they realized that the true horror was not the stories they had heard, but the fear that had taken root in their hearts, turning the night into a landscape of terror and uncertainty. A sudden figure emerged from the darkness, shattering the fragile peace. Silhouetted against the dying embers of the fire, he stood tall and imposing, his features obscured by the shadows. He took a step closer, and the firelight flickered, momentarily illuminating his face. His eyes, cold and lifeless, bored into them, sending a shiver down their spines. In his hands, he held a shotgun, its polished surface gleaming ominously in the firelight. Man with shotgun, S3, don't move. Panic seized them. Their minds raced, desperate for escape, but their bodies were frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. The man took another step closer, and the smell of stale whiskey and gunpowder wafted towards them, suffocating in its intensity. He raised the shotgun, leveling it at them. Man with shotgun, S3. You shouldn't be here. His words, laced with a chilling finality, hung in the air. This wasn't a friendly warning. It was a death sentence.